out of the car. He had parked at a slight angle so that passing motorists wouldn't be able to see his number plate. The back of the car was a few feet away from a metal gate that blocked vehicular access to the field. But on one side of it was another smaller gate that opened onto a narrow walking trail. He walked around and opened the boot, confident that he wasn't visible from the road. Inside, the body was wrapped in black plastic bin bags that had been taped together. She only weighed about 8 stone, so it was easy enough for him to lift her out. He carried her through the small gate and along the trail to the right into the woods. The vegetation between the trees was high and thick, and he found the perfect spot after only a short distance. He dropped her onto a bed of ferns and then carefully removed the bin bags so she was lying there naked, her skin pale against the dark undergrowth. As he stared down at her, he realized there were tears in his eyes, and a voice inside his head was telling him to stay with her for a while so that he could get off his chest the things he wanted to say to her. But another voice told him not to be stupid and to get away from there as quickly as possible. And it was that voice he listened to. He gathered up some leaves and branches and threw them on top of her, and while doing so, he wondered if the body would be discovered before the animals and insects feasted on it. Finally, he picked up the bin bags and used the torch on his phone to make sure he'd left nothing behind. Then he returned to the car and put the blood-soaked bin bags into an unused bag. He then placed this in the boot alongside her clothes, handbag, and purse. Seconds later, he was back behind the wheel. But his work wasn't finished. On the way home, he stopped next to 6 different street bins into which he deposited her belongings along with the bin bags. As a precaution, everything had already been wiped clean. Her phone had been smashed and all her credit cards cut up into small pieces. The only item he intended to keep was her driving license, which he took from his pocket after he pulled the car to a stop in front of his home. He stared at it for almost half a minute and was careful not to touch the splatter of blood on the back. Then he blew a kiss at her photograph and said, "I'm so very, very sorry. You really didn't deserve this." Chapter 1. Anna was glad that nobody in the office had realized it was her birthday. The last thing she wanted was any kind of fuss. It was depressing enough knowing that she was another year older. She didn't want to be teased about reaching the ripe old age of 43. It was scary how quickly the time had passed, and how many milestones she had clocked up. A lot of tears had been shed during those 4 decades, and she didn't feel inclined to celebrate the fact that September the 6th had come around again. The only reason she was going out for dinner tonight was because Tom had insisted. "You've had a tough year, Anna," he'd said this morning, just before they left her house and went their separate ways. "And I wouldn't be a very good boyfriend if I let your birthday pass without making it at least a little different to every other day." He was right about it having been a tough year, especially on the work front. She and her colleagues in the major investigation team had been swamped by the biggest tidal wave of serious crime ever to hit South London. The murder rate was up, along with knife attacks, shootings, robberies, and gang violence. The last case they'd dealt with had been the most challenging, though. It had involved the abduction of 9 small children from a nursery school in Rotherhithe and the murder of one of their teachers. The investigation had ended dramatically 2 weeks ago, but the paperwork was still piled up on the desk in front of her. She'd been wading through it all afternoon, and her eyes were tired from reading the case notes, interview transcripts, forensic reports, and briefing documents that were being prepared for the Crown Prosecution Service. Still, in another 45 minutes, it'd be 5 o'clock, and that was when she'd decided to call it a day. It was only a short drive from the Wandsworth HQ to her home in Vauxhall, so she'd have plenty of time to shower and get dressed before Tom arrived.